Hello everyone, it's Martin aka Anders, and today we're going to do a little bit of a change of pace. Instead of going over stats or anything that's really factual, I'm going to take a swing at working out the problems that Icebox has. Disclaimer, I am not anything even marginally resembling a map designer. I haven't done it professionally or casually, and this would take months of playtesting to validate at any sort of level, but that sure as hell isn't going to stop me. Let's jump right into it. Lack of experience aside, I still want to take a fairly methodical approach to how we do this so that there's some merit to it, and so step one is to frame the issues that people generally perceive as Icebox having. There's no shortage of complaints that people have on this map. Many of them circle around the high angle density and how every time you swing a corner it's seemingly into 15 different angles, but ultimately I actually don't think that's a particularly valid criticism of the map or an issue that needs addressing. There are tools already in the game to deal with that challenge, and it's just an adaptation and playstyle adjustment in order to address those, not something that's fundamentally an issue with the map's design. The one criticism to this map that I do think has a ton of merit is that it's very linear and one-dimensional. The map design itself forces a pretty static playstyle, and there's not a ton of variation. This state of being stems from a couple of different things. The first of which I want to look at is the rise of the post-plant meta that has appeared most prominently on Icebox. I'm sure many of us have played Icebox or watched professional matches of it at this point where you see that generic corner plant on a site where everyone is playing extremely deeply back and we're playing off of Killjoy utility, Viper utility, etc., and not contesting sites actively. A great example of this post-plant style in action is going to come from the FPX versus Ascend matchup from European Masters. It will start with Viper's Poison Cloud going mid to stymie any fast pushes and have soft zonal control of that central portion of the map. After prodding up and trying to get some general information towards either side of the map, they gradually lean back towards B, and they use a Trailblazer to clear out B main. Adapting this to a more formulaic perspective, this could be either the Trailblazer or an Aldrone that you'd more typically see in North American play. We'll continue to play into B main here off of that information, maybe finding a couple of picks as we go, and then throw our Viper Wall in such a way that it'll cut off and impede immediate rotations. From that position, we'll use that Viper Wall, some smokes, or maybe even some subsequent flashes to move our way onto the site proper, get off our Sage Wall, and get down the corner plant. From there, the planter immediately falls off, and we are playing exclusively from back yellow and B main for the remainder of this post plant. In this round and countless others, this style has found incredible success, whether it be with this double stack B corner plant or on the A site using the generator corner plant. The general premise stays the same. And while plenty of things contribute to this rise of post plant as I have it labeled on the chart, it's really more of a rise of off-site post plant, and that leads us to one of the other major symptoms that this map has that I think is a major issue. And that's the inherent characteristic that B-Site's design just doesn't want you to play on-site post plant. It's extremely tight quarters with no particularly favorable sight lines. And the way the map favors rotations from not only mid, but also kitchen and snowman makes the defender's ability to retake against an on-site post plant almost child's play. That will move us on to the last point I wanted to make here though, and that's that the map's fundamental design disadvantages attacker side splits. If we start out with the A site, you can easily enough make your way up mid, smoke off boiler, find your way across there into screen and onto site, but in doing so, the cross from boiler to screens is one of the most egregiously disadvantaged vision corridors in the entire map. You're exposing yourself to a multitude of defender spawn angles, and even if you manage to get across that, you're still going to be moving through a major bottleneck as you take the site. You're either going to go close right past Nest towards 410, which is an extremely acute bottleneck, or you're going to play through backsite, which isn't much of a better situation. And B-site is debatably even worse. You're forced through the incredibly narrow corridor under tube, which is easily countered by a number of agents that are heavily played on this map. You're pushing up tube itself, which is almost always going to be covered by some form of utility or a gun, and it's again a very narrow corridor that's easily held by a single player. The only real enabling opportunity is the ability to go on top of tube, but even that is going to require extensive additional utility investment. You're going to have to smoke off boiler, you're going to have to ensure that nobody's pushing from pallet. That player is going to create additional susceptibilities to push something that's already less appealing than just going main on either other side of the map. And that brings us to the unfortunate reality that you really do just end up going to those main corridors. We saw the B main push that I showed in the first clip, that post plant style for the B corner plant. And on the other side of that coin, we have this clip from Sentinels. In their run into Masters, the grand finals of their Challenger qualifier that they pushed through, Sentinels played Immortals. On their attacking side, they started by pushing B and playing the same type of post plant that we already saw. But then on the second round, they 5-man day main. And then they 5-man day main again, and again, and again, and again. It would be 10 rounds out of 12 that Sentinels would proceed to send 5 people to the A side of the map off of their default. The appeal of prodding up mid is almost non-existent. And so if we take these factors into consideration, the fact that corner plants are super prevalent, the fact that B naturally disables any sort of on-site post plant, and the fact that mid splits are deeply disincentivized, how can we resolve all of those in one fell swoop? My personal conclusion was a full rework of the orange portion of the map, moving from mid to B. You start by widening the gap under tube, making it a double wide space, allowing for broader pushes from attackers. You adjust the kitchen doorway so that it isn't a jump up and is rather a ramp sweeping from either side. And most dramatically, you take the central feature of orange, that double stack of containers, and you chop off the top half. In doing so, you introduce a playable platform, and when adding additional crates on top, you can create attacker-favored sight lines for an on-site post plant of B, assuming they're capable of taking that space in the first place. The end effect of this would be taking a large obstructed area and instead adjusting it to be one of the more open areas of the map, with multiple long-distance sightlines going from the direct edge of tube down across the entirety of the B site. This isn't a purely unilateral change either, because it opens up vision corridors pretty dramatically for on-site B defensive anchors, but simultaneously opens up more windows for top tube players on the attack side to find the anchors that are playing those spots, giving not only the standard LOS to the top container of B side itself, but also the doorway for bridge. If we create a hypothetical play based off of this new map design, you can throw the same poison cloud mid that you would on the default that we saw from FPX. Instead of rotating back towards B main, you can now have your Trailblazer utilize the ramp that we've introduced up to kitchen door to clear all of kitchen for you, and your Viper's Wall, instead of being used from B main across site, can be thrown to block off the entrance to tube, across all of orange, across all of halls, and to cut off Snowman. This carves the pathway out for your Trailblazer as it runs under tube and gets you significant information as you push into this split. Not only that, but assuming you're using the Trailblazer as a sort of entry by proxy, you can have players directly behind it, most pronouncedly a Sage, and once the Trailblazer has cleared kitchen, Sage can wall kitchen itself. A vertical wall here can require 3 segments be shot out before the defender spawn can push through back into kitchen. You can rethrow your Poison Cloud on top of bridge, creating a one-way towards any sort of Snowman push, and you can plant in the top rightmost corner of the B site. From this point, you've already pulled off a far more comprehensive split than can realistically be accomplished in Icebox's current form. You could throw additional flashes through the Viper Wall to cover the push. There are countless ways that you could add to this, but I'm only showing you the bare bones utility that could highlight the opportunities that my suggestions could potentially create. But now we get to the most important part of this. Everything up until now could, at least in theory, be done with an Aldrone instead of a Trailblazer, and with a little bit more susceptibility to people who are holding on site. And that's the post plant, that second issue from the list I created. We can start by positioning one player in kitchen. This doesn't even have to be a player in reality, it could just be a Killjoy's utility, but it allows this position to cover down both the push under tube, as well as the push up tube, the latter of which is additionally supplemented by the fact that they're going to be pushing through a Viper wall. A second player can be towards the top half of the ramp on the back side of orange. This allows one angle that would exist in the current Icebox form, which is that through wall spam line onto the spike, but because of the introduction of the ramp, they can also pixel peek above the edge of orange and provide a supplemental coverage towards any mid-undertube pushes. A third player can be playing on top of orange, that new platform that we've introduced, and depending on which side of the Viper wall they're playing on, can isolate themselves to fight the two corridors that are allowing passage onto site, or they can play the back side of the wall and again cover down top tube, cover under tube pushes, and supplement the other two players on the team. With just 3 players in this post plant, we've created a network that has double coverage on every portion of this post plant except for the up tube push. The greatest weakness of this setup is a really aggressive spam through the stage wall in kitchen, but as I mentioned, that is a 3-segment spam in order to get access to that space. Even then, though, no post plant is going to be perfect. I'm simply presenting a situation where this is not even remotely possible in Icebox's current iteration. Not even close. Something this effective in terms of an on-site B post plant simply does not exist. The kicker here is that the 3 positions that I presented are all within a 2-second strafe of being able to spam the spike. If you agree with my premise that Icebox is becoming fairly linear and that that's coming out of the fact that people are increasingly leaning into post plants, that the B site is really unfavorable for post plants, and that mid really just doesn't favor splits, then I feel like it's pretty hard to argue that the changes I'm suggesting don't, at least in some capacities, address those problems. That said though, like I said in the intro to this video, I am no map designer. In fact, I am nothing even close, so I'm sure there's something or multiple things that are huge, egregious problems that I just completely missed. So I'd love to hear down in the comments below, what big fiasco just ran completely under my radar? Or do you think that there isn't some major problem that I missed? Do you think that these changes would be overall favorable? Or even if there is a big issue, do you think the net effect would still be positive? I really enjoyed doing this sort of thought exercise. Like I said, I don't do map stuff. It's definitely not my area of expertise, and so this was a fun opportunity to sort of push my boundaries, utilize the meager 3D modeling skills that I have from back in the day to sort of make it come to life a little bit for you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this. Per the usual, if you're enjoying all of my content, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also find me over on Twitch. I've been increasingly streaming and actually just got my sub button. A couple of you have popped in there. Really appreciate you guys consuming my content sort of all across the internet. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.